Good evening, boys and girls. Welcome to another live edition of the Highbury Squad. It is hump day, but you know the rules. Please stand clear of those discussion doors because the next stop is indeed HS. Come prepared. I hope you are. Here we go. Good evening, everybody. It is indeed another live edition of the show. And joining me is one of my favorites and a woman who certainly knows her football. And this is our very first Wednesday Women episode of the season. And joining me is Jacinio, a.k.a. Jessica Black from She Knows Arsenal. Bob, Kevin Campbell
I don't know how
intro
to
for
do
you.
the thing. I don't know how to do it yet.
Bob.
Something like that.
Something
I will
like
practice.
You practice. We were just talking off air, you guys, and Jess has just come off a show with other Premier League podcasters, you feel like you just went 12 rounds with Evander Holyfield, right?
Yeah, it was rough. Every single section was, so how bad are Arsenal? Literally, like that's how it felt, ending off with how long do you think Arteta is going to last, So I'm happy to be here. I don't think the conversation is going to be all rainbows and butterflies, but at least I'm here with family. It's a lot better. It's kind of like with real family, you can talk about them, but nobody else can,
Yeah, exactly.
You're always so protective. So yeah, but I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, always. And we've got your back. I mean, as long as Newman and Taib and Matty and all those guys behave, that's the most important thing. And of course, welcome to the squaddies, Addies, everybody in chat. Thank you again for joining us. I do have one very important piece of news. Our first yellow card rescinded this season. And Newman did put in a complaint, and the committee has reviewed. He did say the AST episode that we did was boring. I gave him a yellow card. And the committee agreed that it was a bit unfair on my part. So Newman's yellow card has been rescinded, Jess. It's the
Newman
first
is a troublemaker.
Of the season. Yeah, he's a huge troublemaker. But he's a huge fan. Literally every night he says, when's Jess back? When's Jess back? When's Jess back? Well, here she
Newman.
is. So he'll be happy that he's got a clean slate now for the rest of the season. Right, Jess. I mean, it's not easy being an Arsenal fan. I wanted this to be a bit more of a spontaneous football conversation with you. I didn't want to get stuck into the nuts and bolts of transfers, but more of kind of where we are, where we're going, what we think is going to happen. But there is one transfer that I did have to get stuck into you with because it's so polarizing. And it's not Odegaard. It's Aaron Ramsdale, and it looks like that deal's back on, and it's gonna be happening. So I wanted to bring up, and I know that you love stats and analytics. And by the way, if you guys don't know already, Jess is going to be part of our Fanbassador series this season, doing some tactics and stuff for us. Super smart, and I love how she looks at the game. This was the most saved stats from March 2020. 2020. And you see Leno there, you see Ramsdale there. But there's another stat that a fellow Gooner, I think it was our Gunners that looked into this about 28 days ago. I can't bring it up, but I'm going to read it to you. Basically, when we were looking at signing Ramsdale, they delved into clean sheets, goals conceded, etc. Clean sheets, it was Ramsdale 5, Leno 11, Ederson 19, Alisson 10. Goals conceded, 63 for Ramsdale, 37 for Leno. And of course, Sheffield United were relegated, so you can understand those numbers. He made 147 saves. Leno made 86. His success rate percentage was 70% to Leno's 69.92. Pretty even there. And throwouts, he had 128, Leno 183. Punches 12-12, penalties saved 0, Leno's 1, penalties faced 4-2. I just wanted to get your take. Why is this transfer so polarizing? And is it because of the guy on the right, who even I loved and adored, but I'm so sick and tired of that narrative, of Emi Martinez? Can you give me your take on this transfer and why people are so up in arms about it, mate?
Yeah, it's one of those where Well, let's just start off with Martinez. We need to let that go. Like, as a fan base, we got to let it go. Like, maybe we don't like the way it shook out, and maybe we think Arsenal should have done something differently. But I just see it as simple as he wanted to be a number one, and Leno is our number one. And it's just not as easy as saying, okay, both of you guys are going to stay and you guys are going to fight it out. Nobody does that. You had 2 number one goalkeepers. There's no market for Leno, as we've seen this summer. There's no market for Leno. So in the end of the day, it was easier to sell Martinez because at that point we can sell him for 15. I think we would have wanted more for Burn. And it is what it is. You know, we have to let it go. We know we sold the better goalkeeper, but sometimes that's the way it shakes out. In regards to Ramsdale, I just think we're under so much pressure, and we have so much anxiety, and we're so stressed out about the direction in which we're going. We tend to, if we don't like the signing off of that, you know, especially the goalkeeper, anything that's I think before Odegaard, Arteta in 4 windows hadn't signed anybody in front of the defense, like, or in front of the midfield. No attacking except for Willian. And that's what we're looking for is players to come in that can move the needle up top. Those are the players that you get excited about. Nobody gets excited about defenders and goalkeepers. So when you look at Ramsdale, you realize that it's going to cost us 25 million to sign him. That's not great. That's not great when you feel like you haven't really addressed the issues in front of that position. We still don't have a right back. We still don't have a midfield partner for Thomas Partey. Xhaka is not him. It's just not it. When we first heard about Ramsdale, we hadn't addressed attacking midfield either. And I think a lot of us are starting to get to the point where we're realizing that striker is an issue as well. So I think it's that, you know, it's priority. But then what we tend to do is go to the extreme, the binary on the other side. He's the worst goalkeeper I've ever seen. I've seen people say that he got relegated. He didn't get relegated. Bournemouth got relegated. Sheffield got relegated. He's one part of that team. And if you have a really bad defense in front of you, guess what? You're going to get scored on. You know, so I think we tend to go a little bit too far. What I will say is that I understand what the club is trying to do. In the next couple of years, homegrown players are going to cost infinitely more than what they cost now. So they want to get a homegrown goalkeeper to at least replace Martinez, because Martinez was homegrown. So I get that. They want somebody who's young. I would like anybody who thinks that Ramsdale is the worst goalkeeper ever, look at where the best goalkeepers in the world were at 23. Ramsdale is 23 years old. You're comparing him to people that are 5, 6, 7 years older than him. And I think goalkeepers reach their peak at 28. So you keep that in consideration. You're getting a young goalkeeper who starts in the Premier League. How many young goalkeepers start in the Premier League? 2 big moves to 2 Premier League clubs, albeit they got relegated. But again, that's not really his fault. You think about it that way, you're like, okay, there must be something there with this kid. We know we want to play out of the back. It's hard to tell whether or not he's good at that, because the teams that he's played for like to, well, at least Sheffield in particular, they like to kick long, and you do what the manager asks you to do. At Bournemouth, he played more with his feet. People have said he's good. I'm taking it at face value. I think from the goalkeeper perspective, he's probably better than what we give him credit for. The issue is always going to be priority. If you end the transfer window and you've addressed, you know, central defense and goalkeeper, it becomes an issue because you can spend 25 million on a midfielder, can't you? Mm-hmm. But that's when it becomes an issue. I think that's the issue. Yeah.
Do you think, I put a comment up just a few minutes ago, and I say this a lot on our show sometimes as fans, you know, we've been so spoiled with talent and players over the years, right? But we've also made some terrible decisions. Do you think there's a snobbery? I say this, sometimes we're so snobby because, you know, of course, Harry Maguire was more established when he went to Man United for 85 million. And you could say John Stones was established because he was at Everton, and he went to Manchester City for big money. British players cost more money because that's what the market demands. That's the market value. I kind of hate that people are ragging on Ben White after one game when really he's not playing with his proper partner. You could argue that he didn't have Thomas Partey in front of him, where he's going to be able to excel in terms of how he's able to move the ball forward and how that will work with the Thomas Partey. And here we are, once again, going into meltdown and killing a player before he's even worn the shirt and made a save. And when Leno isn't as great with his feet, and we know that Arteta is not breakable when it comes to how he wants to play. This is how he wants to play. He wants to play from out from the back. And there's this this plan to build a British core, which I have wanted for a while, not because I'm against foreign players coming in, but Arsenal Football Club are and have been and always have had this British core. And maybe it didn't work out with Walcott and Chambers and Jenkinson and Ramsey in terms of the Premier League and being able to really truly compete at that level and get there. But I think it's important going forward, especially with the homegrown thing, that we do have the essence of what it means to be a London club and have some British players. And you can see what they're trying to do. Saka, ESR, Ben White, you've got Aziz coming through. You've got these players. And Ramsdale seems to be somewhat of that ilk of when we're planning for the future, but we think they're good enough to play now. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree 110%. I think our best teams that we've had have had a British core, and we haven't had a strong one in a while. So I like the idea of bringing in more British players. And I just think there is something in the water going on with the homegrown rules that we're going to look back on this time and say, I'm so glad we went ahead and got these players. I'm so glad that we resigned some of our young British talent to long-term deals, because it's going to be difficult. They're going to be way more expensive, and you're going to need more of them in your team. So I see that, like I see it. And in regards to Ben White, I just think we did the same exact thing with Thomas Partey. We expected one player to come in and change everything. And you have to look. He has Chambers to his right, Marie to his left, and Leno behind him. How is he supposed to just change everything for us? I think he was overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. I think the entire team was. And I would expect him to get better from here. I think he'll probably feel a little bit better at home against Chelsea. I know it's going to be a difficult game, but I think Ben White is going to be a really good signing for us, and I'm not really worried about it. But we have this thing where we want a player to come in and change our fortunes because we're not really patient and we're distrustful of what we're trying to do. So we want to see instant results. I have questions about whether or not Arteta is going to make it, but I would say that he's one small piece of the overall picture. So I wouldn't expect him to change everything. Nobody is going to do that for us.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, because I think Ben White would be best suited with Gabriel because of their different strengths. Gabriel is fantastic in the air, in my opinion. Ben White maybe not as strong in the air, but what he does with his feet, and you could see even in that friendly with his sweeping passes and to Tierney and his crossfield passes as well, that he has that range. And I mean, we talked on the show with David Hillier and Kevin last night, Jess, about, I know we lost to Brentford, and it was the manner in which we lost to Brentford that was the most alarming thing, right? But, there was no Thomas Partey. Our right back situation is still vulnerable. You had our marquee signing so far in Ben White playing alongside a snail who, to me, is more suited, if we were in Europe, to be playing in the Europa League versus the pace and the intensity of the Premier League. He's a squad player, in my opinion. And you didn't have Saka from the start. You could argue that even if Aubameyang and Lacazette aren't scoring goals, when they're in the team, they do create danger for the opposition. And so they'll drag defenders with them, and they'll create open spaces. And Lacazette is probably, even though he's not prolific at goal scoring, he's one of our best players who holds up the ball, but also what he does off the ball as well. So do you think that the meltdown is justified, or do you think it should be hold the mayo and mustard? It's only one game. Let's take a breath and breathe, because that wasn't even our strongest team out there.
Oh, I don't want to discount people's feelings, because I think being an Arsenal fan over the last decade has been really painful, so I can understand why looking at the 5 games that we have, or the first 3 games, that's really what people are looking at, and knowing that it's going to be difficult to get points against Chelsea and Manchester City. This is a game that we were counting on, to get some points, and we didn't get it. And I think you're 100% correct that it's the manner. We looked horrible. Like, we really looked so bad.
How is that, Jess? How were Brentford so prepared and we were not, even with the players that were playing? That to me is the scariest thing.
I think it's a couple of things. I think it's, the fact that they've been playing under an established and very, very good manager for the last couple of years, playing in a system that they're comfortable in. He's getting the most out of what he has. And not only that, they're playing at home for the first time in the Premier League and they feel good. Then they see our lineup and they realize that there's no Lacazette, there's no Aubameyang, there's no Thomas Partey. And they're thinking, wow, we have a really good chance. And we just didn't put up a fight. And I think whatever happened with Aubameyang and Lacazette shook that team up. It shook them up. And you can't rely on, Martinelli's coming back from the Olympics, hasn't played with the team a lot. Balogun hasn't played with the team a lot, and so everybody behind them is probably like, what are we going to do? That's not an excuse for, I feel like, the lack of urgency and intensity that we had. And I think that that's a constant issue under Arteta, and I'm not quite sure what it is, but I think it's a combination of things. But ultimately, being unprepared for a season in which we're under immense pressure to get into Europe is unacceptable on all levels, and going into Chelsea, if we don't see a huge turnaround in at least effort level and intensity and energy, I feel like it's just going to get more toxic, but I don't want to discount people's feelings, because I felt very disheartened by what I saw, and it changed a lot of how I felt about how the season was going to go.
Yeah, there's one thing to lose, but it's the manner in which you lose. And one of the things Kevin David was saying last night, and you've played, you were playing in college, like you go out on that pitch, you want to just batter everyone, right? You want to play, you want to give your heart and soul to the cause, to the badge. And I think that the toughest part is we just folded like cheap lawn chairs against Brentford, right? And that's the Jekyll and Hyde of the Arsenal. We could beat Chelsea twice last season, but then we'll lose 3-0 to Aston Villa and be humiliated. We'll lose to Wolves and we'll get like 1 point off Burnley. And I think that's where fans kind of thought, well, here we go again. But I wanted to show this to you too, because there was a survey done with the top bosses. It was a fan hope thing in association with Sky Bet. Who is the Premier League's best manager? And Mikel Arteta was second from bottom here. And then there was another stat as well that they did for the right to remain, the fan hope about owners, and Arsenal second from bottom again. So the juxtaposition for us, and then you've got memes like this, that are going around with all these teams moving forward and we're going backwards. But I've always said, as critical as I've been of Arteta, that this is the transfer window where you will truly see a team in his image, right? A complete turnaround. So January was getting rid of the click and the dross. This window is all about him having, he's got Lokonga, he's got Tavares on deck, he's got Thomas Partey, he's got Gabriel. He'll have Ramsdale as his goalkeeper. He's going to have Odegaard. He's going to have a team that's complete. You could argue that Laka, Pepe, Oba, he's inherited, of course, through the Haaland, ESR and Saka. If we're in this position, Jess, and we lose the North London derby, let's say, we're still third or fourth from bottom, or in that bottom half after the North London derby, what do you do? What should happen? Like, what difference does it make if you bring in a new manager, and who can that be? But can we afford to go into like October, November, being in that bottom half and having this type of narrative for the Arsenal?
Well, I mean, this is the difficulty, and this is why, this is Arteta is never going to get a full team. Like, what manager comes in and has exactly what he needs? Like, it's very difficult to get that over, it's going to take you 3 or 4 seasons, maybe more than that, especially because the type of owners that we have. So I think my issue with this has always been that I don't think Arteta wants to deal with what he has. I don't think he rates the players that he's dealing with, and so he's not able to get the most out of them. I don't think it's fair for him to stay 4 or 5 seasons in order for him to get the perfect team with the perfect profiles so he can play the perfect brand of football while we continuously fall down the table. The expectation is that as you get more players, that the results get better. And if they don't, he has to go. I mean, it's not like he has the worst players. I mean, the players that we're talking about that aren't good enough, or maybe like your Chambers, we should be able to bring in a right back. If we're not, he has to deal with it. But we're talking about like Aubameyang, Lacazette. These players are not, like, even Xhaka, not the worst players in the world, not unplayably bad. If he's unable to get anything out of them with additions, I don't really care that you don't have the perfect specific player in every position. You still look at, if you even, I think we talked about this on Twitter. Nuno was able to organize that team, make that team better.
In 6 weeks.
Most managers are able to do that. So should we give Arteta 5, 6 transfer windows? No, because he needs to be able to prove that he can deal with what he has. It's not going to be perfect. So if he continues to lose, he's going to have to go. And for me, it's not, honestly, Sophie, it's not if, it's when. Because I don't think he wants to deal with it. So he continuously puts us in a system that doesn't work instead of trying to get the most out of what he has.
Yeah, we had that conversation on Twitter, didn't we? And you said to me, it's not a question of if, it's when. And I think I agree with you in the sense that the team is supposed to improve when, like, I would love to see Lokonga and Partey together. Let's see what that looks like, because we know what Xhaka and Partey looks like together. But my biggest fear, and I've defended Xhaka, and I said this a lot on the show to the point where I sound like a broken record, is but you bring him back and, you bring him back, you make him captain, you give him more money. My fear is he going to be the captain for the season? Is this a decision was it just a decision because Oba couldn't play? And then also the communications of Oba and Laka. Now there's this rumor that they had COVID, were the club trying to hide that? Why wouldn't you just come out and say it right off the bat? Now we're talking about, maybe doing a deal with Barcelona for Coutinho, who hasn't even really played in 2 years. If we're going to do a deal with Barcelona, go balls out and get Griezmann. They've got several players there that they want to get rid of and they want to get off their books. Don't go after a player who's kind of broken and hasn't really been effective. Is he still good? Yes, but he hasn't played. And here we are once again, maybe picking up another injury-prone player. So my biggest concern with him is that instead of trying to manage these players that may be an issue, he just wants them gone, right? And I still think Oba, as much as he's pissed me off after, I can't say otherwise I have to put money in a jar, but what he did for a certain game, not showing up and then not warming down, I was really bummed about that with him, but I still think that if he clicks, he could be the missing piece that this team needs because we can't score goals. Odegaard coming in, I see people today like poo-pooing the signing. I don't get it. If he hadn't have come on loan last season, Jess, do you agree that Arsenal fans would be excited about Martin joining the club? Because I think they would. I think they're being,
of course,
right? This Maddison dream is not going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's like Lautaro. It's never going to happen. Martinez, he's not going to come to Arsenal. So we're living in a dream world, whereas we're trying to, our feet are set in sand instead of being set in cement. And I think that's the toughest issue. So I'm a little bit all over the place there with the point, but the point is, what does this team look like to you based on what we have right now? So as we go into Chelsea, how does it look to you? What's Jess's Arsenal team look like?
Well, I guess before I give my team, I just want to 100% agree with you. Like, without Odegaard, we would have been dead last season, and we may have not been excited about. Maybe we we're underwhelmed because, again, he didn't change our fortunes and catapult us into the top 4, but I don't think that had anything to really do with him. And he's a great signing. He's not Madison. He's a great signing, and we should be happy to have him. With him in the team, we were 3rd in the table. I know people don't, I get that we were crap before that, but he did improve us. That being said, I think we have a good opportunity to get some points against Chelsea. I know that people are probably like, what are you talking about? But we tend to do well against Chelsea, and we'll go into a 3-4-3. That's what we should do. We should go into a 3-4-3 and try to be really difficult to beat. I would hope, and I think they will, the fans that go into the stands are the 12th man and get behind our team, because home field advantage is a real thing. I think we saw that most teams that played at home in the first match week won. That's not a coincidence. That's because fans make a difference. So I would say we go into a 3-4-3. Leno's going to be back there, but he's a good shot stopper, so he'll be able to hopefully make some saves. I would say, go with Holding. I would take Marie out. I think Marie, he's a really big liability in my opinion. I would like to see him out of the side, and that would mean bringing in Holding, play Ben White off of the right, play Tierney as left-sided center back, put Tavares as left wing back, put Ainsley Maitland-Niles as right wing back, play Granit Xhaka as left central midfield, put Lokonga in there, who I think his debut was poor, like very overshadowed. Like, he was very good in his debut, and he deserves some credit for going out there and really standing up. He had a really good debut. And then you have the pick of which young players you want to throw out there, because we're not going to have our main strikers. And I think Balogun, as good as he is, he wasn't ready. I think Martinelli is good against Chelsea. He was good against Chelsea twice. So let's give Martinelli the start through the middle. You play Saka off of the left. You put ESR on the left, or Saka on the right, ESR on the left. That's your 3-4-3. And then hopefully Odegaard is ready to play, and maybe we could put him in the second half. But the issue with that team is there's nothing coming off of the bench. So we know whatever we go out there with is pretty much what we got to do. And but I do think that 3-4-3 with Tavares and Ainsley Maitland-Niles, who's still in the club, gives us enough stability, but enough go, when we go on the counterattack going the other direction. That's what I would go with. And no Pepe, because I thought he was really bad against Brentford. I don't want to hold it against him, but the guy, he's not going to start over Saka, so that's what I would go with.
I want to get to him in just a sec with you, but do you think that we've played our best with the 3 at the back? Is that under Arteta? Do you feel like, I guess my biggest concern is, I know people in chat are saying, oh my God, Holding versus Lukaku, are you killing me? But at the same time, let's not forget, in 2017, Holding did pretty well against Chelsea when he had a smart footballer like Mertesacker next to him. He played probably one of his best games I've ever seen for the Arsenal. And I know that was almost 4 years ago, but when he plays, even though Mertesacker didn't have the pace, his football intelligence allowed him to kind of dictate and be in the right spots that he needed to be. And I think Holding sometimes, again, gets a bit of stick when why would people prefer Mari over Holding? I don't understand that. To me, Holding is a little bit better. Are they the answer, Jess? I think that's the difference. Do I think Xhaka's the best midfielder? No. But is he a better option in midfield for this Arsenal team? Yes. Do I think Holding is the best defender? No. But do I think he's a better option right now at the back than Mari? Yes. Do I think Chambers? I've never been a Chambers fan. I'd rather see Maitland-Niles at right back than Chambers. So I think that's where we have to differentiate. When we're providing opinion about these players, it's based on this squad, not versus a City and what Chelsea have or Liverpool have or Man United.
Yeah, exactly. You guys, Marie is not the answer. Just because he's handsome doesn't make him the answer. He's one of those guys that, to me, he gives. This is not to be harsh. This is just, he gives me some Mustafi vibes. I think he does some things that make no sense. And Rob tends to step up in big games. He tends to like that atmosphere, and he's a good low block defender, which is what we'll have. And him next to White and Tierney, I feel like is our best chance with Ainsley Maitland-Niles and Tavares as wingbacks. So I think that's as good as we can get. But yeah, that's not really what you want to be talking about against Chelsea. I would love at some point for us to just be able to play our game, and not have to really tailor it to get a result. But that's where we are. That's where we are at the moment, especially without Thomas and our best strikers.
Yeah, that's the toughest part. How much do you fear for these guys?
Oh, tons. After the Brentford game, I felt so bad for them. And the thing I've been kind of banging on about this entire summer is we cannot rely on these players. I've seen a lot of people say, well, maybe we could just get by with Emile Smith-Rowe and Saka, and we don't need an attacking midfielder. And I don't agree with that. They're in any Arsenal side, the good Arsenal sides, we had a mix of youth and experience. Right now, we don't have that. And one more season of having to carry this team on their backs is either going to end with, them being injured or them asking to leave the club next season because it's just not good enough. And a lot of, we have this anxiety around if they don't play, they'll leave. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think if you bring in better players that they can play with or instead of, you have a better balance. And we shouldn't have 3 or 4 under 21s in our starting lineup. That's not good enough. And I do fear for them, especially Bukayo. We, within the next year or so, will have to offer him a new deal. And I fear he'll say no. He's good enough to play for City. We need to improve in order to keep this young core, or else we'll just have to start it over again. So I fear for them in terms of injuries and being overplayed, but also will we be able to keep them?
Mm-hmm. It's my biggest fear too. And good evening, everyone. You're listening to the Highbury Squad. It's Wednesday Women here with myself and Jessica Black. She knows Arsenal. If you don't follow her, you should. It's Jacinio, and She Knows Arsenal on YouTube. Fantastic channel. Jess knows her football. There is no doubt about that. 400 of you in live chat right now. Hit that like button if you hate Tottenham. It's the only rule of the house. And as bad as the Arsenal are, we will always hate Tottenham. So smash it, caress it, do whatever you want to it. Just hit it. I say too, the more time Saka spends in the England team with, the Raheems of the world, and the players that he's surrounded by, Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, the more he'll, and Jack Grealish just admitted, didn't he, when he was? They all do. They talk. Kevin tells us all the time. Of course, players talk, especially when you're on international duty as well, and. Jack's talking to Raheem about City, and he's talking to Phil Foden about City. And if we do not build a team around these 2 players, 4 players maybe, Saka, ESR, Tierney, like Martinelli especially not being a Haylen boy, could easily walk away from the Arsenal if he's not given an opportunity this season. In fact, Thomas Partey could walk away if we don't do the right thing. Kieran Tierney could walk away if we don't do the right thing. But the biggest concern is with the financial instability of the club, the lack of investment from the owners, the dubious dealings that we've done in the transfer window, Jess, is that if someone comes calling and offers 150 million for Saka, number one, it's going to be hard for the club to say no. Number two, ultimately, he's a footballer and he wants to win. That's my biggest concern. Like, how long do we have before you said next season? I think maybe we've got 2 seasons to show him that we're trying to build a competitive Premier League team.
Well, I mean, we at least need to offer him a contract, get him on a longer deal. I think that
which we will for sure.
Yeah, we need to at least offer him a new contract with improved terms. But, and it's funny because I think the first time I was on the Highbury Squad, you asked me to have questions prepared or something. And I think I asked something to this effect, like if you had to sell either Martinelli or Saka, what would you do? And I said that with the eye to this specific thing happening. I never thought we would turn over the squad quick enough. And these players are going to improve. People are going to start looking Aston Villa is already asking for ESR. It's only a matter of time before City looks at Tierney, before they look at Saka. Because make no mistake about it, too, these teams are going to be in the Premier League. The Premier League is the only team that can afford our players at the price that it would take for us to want to sell them. So it's a real worry, because players, as much as they love their club, they will ultimately leave to be successful. That's why we love them. Saka is a competitive player. He's going to want to step up. And right now, with the team that we're building, it's a slow rebuild. And I'm not going to say we haven't improved, but everybody else has improved as well. At some point, there'll be projects that are just more attractive, you know? So I do wonder how long we really have to keep these players, but I think it's closer than we think, and we have to be realistic about that. I do think we have a little bit of time, but we need to be looking at that.
Totally. And we've been in decline for a while. We've done and made terrible decisions. It started with Wenger and Gazidis, and it just went on. Unai had an uphill mountain to climb. There was no doubt. Everyone keeps saying, well, Arteta inherited Unai and Wenger's mess. Well, no, Unai and Arteta inherited Wenger's mess, and I think that, for us, what I just loathe is that we've become a laughing stock. We went from the invincibles to the invisibles, and it hurts, as a fan. How much do you believe that Arteta can really turn this around, Jess? Have you lost faith, or are you willing to wait and see? As I said at the top of the show, like, if you've got all of the players starting, do you give him a chance, or do you cut the cord after the North London derby if we're in the same position? But my question, and circling back to that comment at the top of the show, is who do you bring in? I don't think they're going to fire him, by the way. I think he will be there at the end of the season.
It's a really, really tough one, because I just feel like we've put enough in place where I would like to see what he really wants. But at the same time, I just don't think, I think some of these players that he doesn't really want to work with are still going to be here, and if he's unwilling to kind of make changes, and if the club is not going to give him the players, because, if you give him a Maddison and a Martinez, then, we're talking about something different, but we're going to end up with Lacazette, Aubameyang. They still have contracts. They're still going to be here. So it's a weird one for me. I do think that what I've seen from him, I think I've seen a more improvement than other people have, in terms of the way that we play, the system, the way that we build up and things like that. It's a complete change from what Unai was doing, which is basically throw him out there and hope. There is something there, but it's still results. And I still think there are aspects of his management that holds us back. Sometimes he makes very strange decisions in really critical games. And I don't know if that's going to change, because I find him to be a little bit arrogant. All managers are, but like, you kind of need to know what you're doing to be able to be that arrogant. So I don't know. I feel, what is the goal? Like, what is the goal for Arsenal based on the transfer window? I don't think it's top 4. So can we expect that?
I think,
what is the goal here?
What this smacks of to me is that he's got another season to build a team. And there's, unfortunately, we live in an instant gratification world, let alone in football. Everyone wants everything now. Tomorrow, today, an hour ago. And that's how the world works now. There's no patience for anything. You can't work towards building something, because, there's just too much risk in football with money. And it's debilitating when, a club does suffer and doesn't do well. And we're definitely there. But I think we have owners that don't mind the slog. And we've seen it with Kroenke's teams here. You're here, you're very astute on your sports here. I was at the Galaxy game last night, and I was so pissed off because the Rapids beat the Galaxy. And they don't even have a shirt sponsor, Jess. They don't even have a shirt sponsor. But they've been very patient in rebuilding the Denver Nuggets. And the Denver Nuggets were a lot better this season. The Colorado Avalanche went through a very tough time, and they were much better last season. The Rams, he's going all in. He's given Matthew Stafford the world, you know. So they seem to be patient because they can afford to be in, and I say that so weirdly when I say they can afford to be, because it's OPM, right? They play with other people's money, but at the same time, they're not willing to take the risks to dip into their pockets.
Right. And I think the goal is Europe. From what I've seen from the transfer window, we're trying to get into Europe. And I think Odegaard and Ben White do improve you. But again, it's still going to be quite difficult when you have glaring issues in your squad. So if we get to, honestly, like, it's very difficult because you don't have the players, especially with Gabriel and Thomas. I think those are huge misses. So I would say, like, he has to be in the top 6, like, in the next 10 games or so. Like, he has to be, like, in it, not when we're like, well, we're only 4 points off. Not that. He has to be in it. Like, you know what I mean? So,
but there's a lot of people saying, "Hey, Soph, come on, it's 14 years." I'm talking about with Arteta. I'm not talking about pre-Arteta, because to me, this smacks of. And you guys who aren't familiar, go look it up. To me, Arteta's his Sean Avery. A lot of people here felt like Sean Avery should have been sacked after, like, the terrible season after the Rams went to the Super Bowl, right? Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh," and the sky was falling. But he had an average quarterback, let's be honest, and he made that trade, and they've gone big, this season to try and win it all again. They've got that massive stadium, of course, that they've built that cost $7 billion, and to me, Arteta is his Sean Avery, and they are willing to ride the wave with him for a little while.
They think he's a part of the solution, and I think they're betting on him becoming this generational manager.
Sorry, Sean McVay.
No, yeah.
I was thinking of the Avery's the ice hockey player, right? Anyway, carry on. McVay. Thanks, guys.
But they're betting on him becoming this generational manager. They believe it. And I think there's some legs to it, but that means that the Arsenal fan base is going to have to go through the trials and tribulations of this kind of coming to fruition. And so it is this thing where it's like, we want to be good now, but as long as, for me, there has to be some sort of benchmark. We can't get 8th again. He has to seem like we have to be improving. I do think that the team that we have now is more than capable of getting into Europe. I do, barring the injuries. And I think bringing in Tavares and Lokonga helps that. If he doesn't get that, though, he has to go. Like, he has to get Europe, because we also don't have Europe, right? So we don't have distractions. He got the preseason. He's getting his Odegaard. He's gotten his Ben White. Those are players he wanted. So we're not talking about players that he inherited only. I think top 6 is the bare minimum, and we have to be there soon.
Also, Jess, you mentioned Europe. We were always able to dangle the Europa League carrot in front of players. That's how we signed Oberlacher, Thomas Partey, Gabriel, Pepe, Kieran Tierney. Kieran Tierney was playing in the Champions League, but it was a route to maybe get back into the Champions League, the Europa League. We don't have that now. It's harder. It's really, really tough to convince top tier players not only to come to Arsenal now, but without European football, I think sometimes we need to take a beat and realize just how tough that is.
That's why the players are younger. I think people also have to take into consideration that the players that we can attract are some of the best young players. And that also comes with the realization that we may be a stepping stone for some players. So it's not nice, because that's not, we're used to being the final destination for players in their prime, but that's not what we are. We're a youth project. We'll have to sell big on some of these young players, but there's something there. But if you bring in a 22-year-old, a 23-year-old, 2 21-year-olds, your best players are 20 and 19. We are looking at a longer term rebuild with a really young coach. So that realization is there, and I'm willing to take the ride,
Me
but he
too.
still has to hit the benchmarks, and the minimum is Europe.
Yes.
And that's going to be really difficult. You have Spurs, Leicester, Aston Villa, who I think that was a bobble that they had the other day. I think they'll be fine. West Ham, who look good. Everton, who has a new manager. That's 4 teams right there. And that's not even counting that one team that always just kind of inevitably ends up there. Maybe Brentford, maybe Leeds. You never know. So it's going to be difficult to get top 6.
We could have 3 points by the time we get to the North London derby, but we could beat Chelsea on Sunday. You know, we've done pretty well against them, but I think that, you know, Lukaku coming back is going to have a point to prove. They're very good. They've won the Champions League and the European Super Cup. They're not a joke. They're probably one of the favorites to win the Premier League this season. You know, now we're competing against Aston Villa and Everton and Wolves and Leeds, and that's the bracket that we're in, and that's a tough pill to swallow. Right. Get your questions in for Jess real quick. We've got another 10 minutes with her on the show. I'm going to ask her a couple more myself. Because I really want your take on, is this guy going to get his chance this season, Jess? That's a big sigh.
One, because I just, with Lacazette and Aubameyang, who I kind of think are going to be here no matter what at the end of the transfer window, I think that leaves him very little, because you have to remember, we just brought in Odegaard. He's going to start every game that he's fit. That means that you're throwing ESR off on the left. Arteta really likes ESR, you can tell. So when you have ESR off on the left playing most games, I think that limits his opportunities. And I don't think he's a true 9 at the moment, even though that's what they see him as. So it's tough, even without Europe. Well, without Europe, I don't think he's going to get as much time as people want, to be honest.
Is that the right thing or the wrong thing for you? Do you rate him? Are you because obviously last season when we weren't scoring goals, everybody was like, play him, give him a chance. Why wouldn't you?
I do rate him. I think Martinelli is the type of player that would do well under like Arsene. You know, I think a lot of our players would do well under Arsene because he's an off the cuff kind of player, very similar to Pepe. They're not system players, they're chaos players. They do really well in situations where they're just able to go, and Arteta's system is not like that. So I think it takes away from some of what makes him special, which maybe is why people are thinking he's not as good as he really is, but he really is a really good player. Do I think it's the right thing? I mean, you sign Aubameyang to big deal and you decide to keep Lacazette, then yeah, it inevitably becomes the only option, isn't it? You know, you're not going to start Martinelli over Aubameyang and Lacazette. So it's just unfortunate, but it's not right because he should be playing, but I also don't want 3 19-year-olds starting in our team either.
Just when you say, yeah, I mean, teams that have started with kids, I mean, when Fergie did that, they had Cantona, they had Brian McClare, they had Dennis Irwin, they had real players like Brian Robson even at that time. Here's one for you from Vapehav. Who loses the spot? You loosely mentioned Pepe. With Odegaard coming in, what would you gave us your 11 for Chelsea, but generally, like if Oberlacher stay, we've got when you hear these players' names on paper, they're good players. So who bites the dust?
It's Pepe. It's Pepe. I don't know if you guys. Saka is Arteta's favorite. Every manager has a favorite, somebody who, no matter what the circumstances, they trust them, and that's Saka. And Pepe is actually like trying to win a spot against the favorite, you know, and so that's really difficult. Even when Pepe was playing well, Arteta would still defer to Saka. I think that says a lot. And it's unfortunate because I do think Pepe is a really good player, but I don't think any of us can really say that he's hitting the heights that he should based on the price tag. But not only that, but he's like 26. Saka is 19, you know, so that just shows how.
But Pepe has that X factor, don't you think? That
he does.
And I mean, he also, I think he gets an unfair. I've been really brutal on him, but I think it was fair. Like in his first season, you expect a 72 million player to come in and hit the ground running. But I think he's been a little bit better than people give him credit for. I had to really take a step back in my opinion of him after last season.
It's the system, Sophie. I just feel
Talk to
Arteta's
me
gonna.
about that. Explain it to me.
So, I mean, basically, Arteta wants to play with more, let's say, more technical players that can play possession-based football. That's as simple as I can make it. And so we have a couple of players in particular, Aubameyang and Pepe, that tend to look a little bit off in build-up because that's just not their game. We like to slow the game down a lot. Little triangles here and there, shift the players around and do a switch and then get it to Tierney and do a cutback and hopefully there's a tap in. And Pepe has improved so much in the system. So I get what you're saying about like he has that X factor and when he's on, he's on. But when we talk about who fits the system better in terms of what Arteta wants, who's closest to a City player? Saka. Saka
Mm.
is, so he'll always play. And I think that's why Aubameyang suffers as well. Because really, in this system, it should be somebody who's better at build-up. And that's why Lacazette looks better in the system. So it's not that I think that Pepe we shouldn't just put him on the left and play Saka and Pepe one on each side. But he always wants to play with like another number 10 on the left-hand side. And that just says ESR. So the two men left out is Martinelli and Pepe,
Mm.
unfortunately. They're both really good players, but they don't fit.
What would you think? And a few people have asked, and Lee Judges was on the show talking about this, because Gooner's podcast, Magic Mike's in the house too, saying Oba's the one who should be dropped. And a lot of people think Pepe should be given a shot as at striker. What's your take on that?
I would like to see it, but he has played striker before, but he played that way at Lille and at the time,
Hmm.
which is why we bought him. They were playing a really counter-attacky system where they would have so much space in front of them and they would just break. And Pepe would just start running with the ball, smack it in the back of the net, deal done. The way that we play, our center forward has to be able to be a part of build-up, hold the ball up. He's a little bit on the lightweight side. I don't think he really has his positional play perfect at the moment. So as much as I'd like to see it, like I wouldn't hate to see it. Like we were playing against Villarreal, I thought that that was a mistake. If he was going to play a false nine, he should have played Pepe, but he didn't. I would like to see it, but now that we're under pressure, maybe it's not the right time to start experimenting, is it?
I I think that given the opportunity, I don't think Arteta sold on him. I don't think Arteta believes in Pepe, and I think we're seeing a little bit of how he treats his non-signings. And
Yeah, a lot of the Emery signings are gone, you notice.
mhm,
So,
absolutely, and a lot of the
yeah.
Emery signings have, been ostracized. I wanted to ask you real quick. I want to encapsulate a question that a lot of people. Good evening, Harry. Thanks a lot for your kind words. Appreciate it. Always good to see you in the house. Can we talk real quick? I know we're at 52 minutes. We've got just a few minutes here left, but so much we're talking about of, you know, is Odegaard the right signing? Are we wasting money on Ramsdale? Can Pepe be the man we want him to be? Is Oba going to stay? What does this mean? Like, is Laka an asset that we should capitalize on right now? I wanted to talk to you about the players who are at Disneyland right now, like Torreira, right? And that part of, I think, what makes and ridicules us as a club. We're paying his wages right now. Obviously, he lost his mum. That time in terms of trying to do a deal with Boca, that was never going to work out. Boca don't have that kind of money. What's your take on these ancillary players now? Like, can't get rid of Kolasinac. We re-signed Xhaka. Torreira's on vacation. We're paying him. What do you make of all that, Jess?
Well, I think Kolasinac falls into that Mustafi kind of category of players that just are not good enough and we need to just tear up the contract and move on because nobody wants him, and I think that that's what's happening. We'll end up having to pay him the 5 million and let him go. I think each player is quite different because with Torreira, I do think he's good enough to play for Arsenal, but he never really adapted, so There's a lot of people that are like, Arteta just didn't integrate him. Well, he didn't want to be integrated. He didn't want to be in London. He didn't like it. And I know there were some other factors there where people said that he was being bullied and all this kind of stuff. Besides that, he just never fit in, so he doesn't really want to be here. I do think it looks bad that you're at Disneyland and we're getting beat by Brentford. I think that that's not a good look. But with Torreira, I just hope we're able to get a fee for him because he's still quite young, and somebody who wants him should have to pay it 22 to 24 million. But the teams that are going to want him are going to want a loan with an option. So we're in a really bad position when it comes to Torreira because he's very vocal about not wanting to be here. We're not willing to work with him and make him look like somebody who's desirable. So we'll end up losing him for peanuts. But I'm perfectly okay with Lucas Torreira not being here because he doesn't want to be an Arsenal player. And with Xhaka, it's one of those where it looks really dumb if next summer we try to sell him and people are still offering us 12 million. The whole idea of protecting his value, it reeks of not taking the 15 plus 8 in add-ons from AS Roma last summer for Lacazette. Their value is not going to increase. He's 29 years old. I don't think he'll have a better season than he had last season because that was his best season. I don't think he's getting better than that. So it just seems dumb, to not take the 12. I know it would have been like probably not good for, maybe we're looking for a certain amount, but like, let's be real. Nobody's going to offer us more. So why?
I agree. And I've defended him. I really have. I get like, if you don't feel like you can get the value for him now after those Euros, what makes you think you're going to get the value for him next summer? But again, in a time where, look, Thomas Partey is very injury prone since he's come to the Arsenal, wasn't really at Atletico Madrid. It's really tough to watch. Bellerin.
But just
Go on.
really quick.
Go back to that.
Yeah, we couldn't. So yeah, but like you could have taken that 25 million that you paid for Ramsdale and put that together with the 12 million, and we could have had a different midfielder that makes us better. A Basuma. Yeah, like Basuma. Exactly. So again, the decision making is very questionable. And that's why for me, I love Edu. I know he's invincible, but this is business. The guy for me is not good enough for Arsenal. Like, I don't think he's good enough. The decisions that he's making doesn't make sense to me. But you want to talk about Bellerin too?
I mean, he wants to leave. He's offered to take it, but no one will buy him. I mean, I almost feel like LAFC should buy him.
Oh my goodness. Bellerin. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, Bellerin. Now because all of these players are so different. It's like we can all say that like they're all deadwood, but they're all different. With Bellerin, it's like Inter Milan is willing to spend 10 million on Denzel Dumfries. Why didn't we offer him for 5 million, like something like that? The reality is nobody wants our players, and they're not going to want them next year. So at this point, sometimes you have to just take the loss, especially when it comes to Bellerin, because nobody wants him. But again, you had 50 million that you spent on Ben White, who I love, but you had 50 million plus 25 million for Ramsdale plus 25 million that you got for Willock. Or let's just take that out. You have 75 million. Could you have not gotten 3 players for 25 million and improved our team? Its decision making is not right. You could have doesn't Max Aaron's 25 million.
Add it, Jess. Add it to and you're right, Dan. Let's add it to this list. This is the embarrassment. We've given players away for free since January 2018. And when you look at these numbers, it's horrific. But I agree with you. In order to like really turn the club around, you're going to have to eventually. I think that deal will be done with Kolasinac to move him on like that, and it might have to be the same with Bellerin. Let me get you out on a couple here. Are we a better team now than we were last season? Because we're supposed to be after spending money. We've got Lokonga, Tavares, Ben White, Ramsdale's coming in, Odegaard's coming back. Are we a better team?
Well, it's so hard to say. I would say that we've definitely made it so that when certain people go out, we have like for like replacements, but at the same time, Lokonga is not Thomas now, right? Let's be real about that. Who knows how far off Aubameyang and Lacazette have, we don't know how much they've fallen off, so if they're worse than last season, which we don't know yet, then we're worse. I would say Ben White is a good replacement for Luiz, but I can't say that right now. I feel like he's way better. He may become better. So I think from what we've done so far, we have the foundations for a really good team in the future. But in the now, I think we're about the same. I think we're about the same that we were last season.
Okay. And then your biggest hope and fear for this coming season?
My biggest fear. So it's my hope and fear?
Yeah. What's your biggest hope and your biggest fear?
I'll start with the fear. We won't.
So much easier with Arsenal to start.
Yeah. Not getting into the top six, not getting into Europe. That would be my biggest fear. The Emirates turning, I really don't want to see that again. It's hard. I mean, I'm not there, but like you can sense it even when you watch it on TV when the fans are not happy. Some of the seats are empty. They're already having a hard time selling tickets for the Chelsea match. That just tells you all that you need to know right now. And I'm not looking forward to potentially having to look for a new manager mid-season. I just don't like it at all. It's really, really difficult, and it's hard on the players and it's hard for the fans. My biggest hope is that we improve. Everybody can see a style of play. Arteta improves with his management, that he's done some self-reflection and realizes that he did make some mistakes last season that he needs to repair. And I just want us to get into Europe. I don't care how we do it. I don't care what we got to do. We just need to get into Europe. I don't care if it's ugly. I don't care if it's 3-4-3. Just get into the top six so we can feel decent about ourselves. I mean, that's it. That's it. That's
in a nutshell. Do we beat Chelsea this week? Go on, mate.
Oh, and no more injuries to main players. Like, I know it's difficult, but them injuries, they're just so difficult because they never come. I know this sounds bad, but they never come to players that you don't really care about. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's always like the main
like Chambers.
guys. Yeah, it's never like a Chambers.
Sorry,
I
apologize.
Yeah. I know it sounds so bad.
Jess is the one that brought it up, not me.
It's never the players that you don't want. It's always like Thomas. Like, it's so hard, but
that's a brutal one. It really is, because there's nothing more we'd love to see him. Hi, Stand Your Ground. Women's football. It's actually women talking about football. And if you don't like it, I'll just have my bouncers escort you on the way out. Don't you worry about it. Jess, you're going to have to give Newman a wave, otherwise he'll kill me. There you go, Newman. There's your wave. And yes, please party, stay fit for the season. Do we beat Chelsea this weekend? Or do we get a point?
I think we get a point. I think it's going to be a 0-0, 1-1 type of thing. Like, it's not going to be a blowout. We would have to I don't think it's going to be a blowout. 0-0, 1-1. We're stuck in our box, batting away shots, playing for our lives. Maybe Martinelli gets a goal. Who knows? But 0-0 or 1-1 is what I'm going with. And if you told me I would bite your hand off for it now. I would, even if I knew that it was going to be ugly.
Yes. I mean, look, last season I think is a little bit different to this season, facing Chelsea. And, we live in hope. Hope isn't a plan. But we definitely have had their number, not only in the cup, but also in the league. This is the game where things can really turn around in terms of the confidence side of things, isn't it, Jess? Because mental and confidence is half the battle in football as well. Just a reminder for everyone, this ends tomorrow, the Sol Campbell signed frame shirt. People saw this and they were like, oh, Kevin Campbell. No, it's Sol Campbell. Go get your ticket right now. I will give away a free ticket tonight. And here is the question. How many goals has Pepe scored so far for the Arsenal? And remember, it's time stamped. It's an easy question, but it's all about the time stamp and who gets to answer the fastest. The Highbury Squad at gmail.com. The Highbury Squad at gmail.com. How many goals has Pepe scored for the Arsenal since signing? You will go into the auction tomorrow night at 7:30. And Jags hasn't won since you lot screwed him up. I think you've bocked him. Poor Jags. And you know what? He said, the next one I win, Matty K, stop. He's not won one since you've been doing that. Because the next one he says he will dedicate to the Highbury squad. And if he does that, I will put it in an auction ourselves as well. So, yeah. Jess, let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, guys, you can follow me on Twitter at It's Jessinho or She Knows Arsenal. It's on YouTube as well. And I have a show in like an hour or so. So you can come and talk to us about Ramsdale and Odegaard. So that should be fun.
You can go give Jess crap about Ramsdale on her channel, but be nice. Yeah. And Odegaard, if anyone's upset about that signing, you guys would have been stoked with that signing had he not come on loan last season. That is what I think. He's an upgrade. He can help the team right now. It's the type of player that we want. Take a deep breath, everybody. And I know it might sound rich coming from me, who's been very critical of Arteta, but let's see how this team comes together under him when everybody is fit. And Caps, you've got to send it to thehighburysquad@gmail.com. No answers in chat. I won't accept them. Don't forget Talented Gooners. I've got 3 or 4 lined up. The show launches next week. There's nothing better than showcasing talented people outside of football in the community. And we've got
Is this really a talent show?
People like it's the American Idol of the Highbury squad.
Oh, so cool. I love it.
Yeah.
That's
so
exciting.
we've actually got an animator who works for Netflix coming up. We've got Ruth's art designs coming up. We've got some really cool stuff. So Talented Gooners launches next week. It'll be a nice short form show where we highlight really good people doing great things in the community, Jess. If you have a secret talent, I'm all ears.
This is my talent. This is it. That's talented.
Absolutely, 100% it is. All right, everybody. It's been fun. We return tomorrow. We've got Josh back for the tactical breakdown tomorrow. Jess will be doing some of these for us in the coming season as well. Josh is going to tell us how we can beat Chelsea, and he's going to present it to Super Kevin Campbell. So that's going to be very interesting. So be sure to join us tomorrow. Until then, Jess, how about you take us out? It's Up the Gunners, by the way, and we have to salute the squaddies. You know how it works.
So Up the Gunners, right?
Yeah.
Up the Gunners.